Imagine for a moment that the world you live in is very different to how it is now. The atmospheric conditions are the same, but there is no soil cover. Instead of soil, there is a flat, black, dry floor, a surface upon which nothing grows and nothing can live on. There's nothing to eat. If you plow and sow it, nothing comes out of it. There are no contours, mountains, or seas. If you lived in such a world, questions such as why do sweet-smelling and tender fruits, delicious vegetables, and foods of various kinds not emerge from this ground would most likely never even occur to you. Since you had never encountered them, you would probably never realize that such products could grow out of the earth. Imagining the absence of the soil you perhaps tread on every day, without even thinking about, will give you a better idea of its vital importance. In Surah Al-Kahf, our Almighty Lord reveals that had He wished, He could have made the world a dry and arid place.
I seek shelter in God from the accursed Satan. We will certainly make everything on it a barren wasteland. In this film, we shall be looking at the miraculous soil we live on. We will see that our Almighty Lord is He who creates all things in a matchless form, at the moment of His choosing, and who shows us the proofs of His own existence and incomparable art of creation, even in a handful of soil. Were there no such substance as soil, in aesthetic terms, the world would look very harsh and ugly. In the absence of soil, no trees or plants would grow, and the earth would simply just be a mass of rock and stone. More important than all of that, however, is that if there were no soil, the most basic source of food, essential for life to exist and survive, would not exist. However, thanks to our Almighty Lord's infinite mercy and blessings, the world we live on has not been created like that. God has placed soil, which He has made so fertile, at the service of man and produced countless varieties of products from it. There is no end to the blessings that God bestows on us through the soil. The soil is like a special food store that gives life to thousands of plants and represents the natural wealth of the earth. Hundreds of kinds of fruits and vegetables. Although they all spring from the same soil, they all have different colors, shapes, and tastes. There is nothing else on earth that resembles soil, which produces springs and products with different flavors and colors, even though tons of garbage and waste are deposited on top of it and millions of dead bodies decay within it. It is impossible to produce such a material artificially, even using all the means provided by the latest technology. All this is evidence that soil was created with miraculous properties as a unique and special compound that permits life to continue. God reveals in verses of the Quran that soil is an important proof of creation. A sign for them is the dead land which we bring to life and from which we bring forth grain of which they eat. We place it in gardens of dates and grapes and cause springs to gush out from it, so they may eat its fruits. They did not do it themselves, so will they not be thankful? Soil, the miraculous compound that swathes the earth. Although it looks quite uncomplicated, soil actually has a highly complex structure and contains a substantial ecological system within itself. The compounds in soil include various minerals, substances such as water, oxygen, and humus, as well as plant and animal wastes. In addition, there is also a living component of soil, from which the substances and compounds that give the soil its basic characteristics come. Elements and substances resulting from chemical processes performed by bacteria, fungi, and other microorganisms are among these.
Close inspection shows us that soil is a miraculous mixture made up of a great many different elements, chemical substances, and microorganisms. When elements and organisms that have no effect on their own come together, they produce a special material that is of vital importance to both us and to the ecological equilibrium. The substances in the soil and the proportions thereof have been very specially created to make the soil fertile and productive. Let us consider the medicines we use when we fall sick. All of these drugs are obtained by combining different substances in varying proportions, and we then wait for them to have a beneficial effect on the human body. Numerous specialists work for months on end to do this, and to produce the drug best suited to human health. In the same way that numerous chemicals are used on the basis of specialized knowledge in the manufacture of a drug, the soil that represents the food source of all living things is created by the elements and microorganisms that comprise it being brought together through a special scientific knowledge. In addition, although a drug can be produced by human hand, it is impossible to obtain even a handful of productive soil in that way.
It is estimated that between 150 to 350 years need to pass for 1 centimeter of soil to form. Soil capable of use in agriculture takes 20,000 years to form, even under the most appropriate conditions. This all shows that soil did not come into being by chance, but is the result of creation through God's sublime might and knowledge. Just pouring water on soil can be enough for many plants to emerge from it. The way that millions of tons of vegetables, fruits, trees, and plants continue to emerge from the soil every year gives us an idea of the intense nature of the chemical processes going on inside it. Just reflecting on that magnificent fact is enough for one to properly appreciate the knowledge, might, and compassion of God. In one verse of the Quran, God says, "Do they not see how we drive water to barren land and bring forth crops, by it which their livestock and they themselves both eat? So will they not see?" The structure of soil is ideally suited to life. Soil consists of particles of various sizes that all tend to stick together. So strong is the attraction between these particles that they can only be separated mechanically by the application of a specific force. In addition, there are particles that are completely molded together in soil, and these cannot be separated at all. These particles, all bunched together, represent the structural feature of soil and are all arranged in a specific manner. By combining or sticking together, these particles give rise to the structural units of soil, or larger particles. This process is, of course, a very complex one, and is the result of numerous chemical bonds. The way that these soil particles all adhere together and never split apart prevents soil from being just a loose and feeble substance. By means of this property of soil, it is easily able to resist being crushed or dispersed by external pressure. The way that we are easily able to plow and sow the soil, to use it as a building material, and to walk on it with ease, and the way that tree roots and plants are held in place by it, all stem from this structural property. Our Almighty Lord, who creates all things to perfection down to the finest detail, has created soil with these features so that man and all living things can benefit from it. The fact that all things are created flawlessly and in the finest manner is revealed as follows in this verse of the Quran. He is God, the Creator, the Maker, the Giver of form. To Him belong the most beautiful names. Everything in the heavens and earth glorifies Him. He is the Almighty, the All-Wise.
A giant laboratory working for us underground.
Soil is not something that merely consists of organic materials and particles. Microorganisms that live within it are another important component. To give an example, 1 teaspoonful of soil contains some 4,000 kinds of microorganisms. The density of the microorganisms in soil and the various chemical processes they perform play a major role in soil fertility. These organisms break down plant and animal wastes in the soil, thus both meeting their energy needs and also converting nutrients into forms that plants can absorb, because the plants contained in plant and animal wastes in soil, and nitrogen compounds and minerals in particular, are not in forms that plants can use at once. However, this state of affairs, which might be problematic for plants, is thus resolved by microorganisms. And as the soil becomes richer in nutrient terms, it also becomes more fertile. A scientific paper published by the University of Nebraska's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources describes how these organisms increase soil productivity. There's a whole other world beneath your feet. While the soil's ecosystem gets little thought, understanding the secret life of soil microbes could enhance crop production and the environment. These invisible soil denizens are workhorses in complex processes integral to healthy plants and soils. Microbes perform all sorts of beneficial tasks, such as converting plant residue to rich, stable humus, improving crop nutrient and water use, and enhancing soil structure.
The way that these tiny life forms, too small to be seen with the naked eye, act just like chemists to make the soil fertile, is a miraculous state of affairs. Even a chemist who has spent years in training can make a mistake, but these organisms have been discharging their duties in an impeccable manner since the day they were first created, and produce the nutrients needed for the fruits and vegetables we eat. Clearly, our Almighty Lord creates these organisms with the knowledge and characteristics they need, and bestows countless blessings on us by making the soil we live on so fertile by way of these organisms. This is certainly a great blessing. Although all the plants that grow in soil are watered by the same water, perform photosynthesis with the same sunlight, and use the same air, they all have very different shapes, tastes, and nutritional values. Just a little reflection shows that this is a most extraordinary state of affairs. As if it were a magic compound, the soil soon converts seeds, water, air, and sunlight into a delicious apple, or a banana, or a sweet-smelling strawberry. This property of soil appears as follows in the Quran.
In the earth there are diverse regions side by side, and gardens of grapes and cultivated fields, and palm trees sharing one root and others with individual roots, all watered with the same water. And we make some things better to eat than others. There are signs in that for people who use their intellect. Our Lord, the infinitely compassionate, makes the fertility of the soil a means to ensure that blessings his servants will enjoy eating reach them in the most perfect manner. In the words, "We split the earth into furrows," in another verse, God describes how he has made the soil such a productive substance. Man has only to look at his food. We pour down plentiful water, then split the earth into furrows. Then we make grain grow in it, and grapes and herbs, and olives and dates, and luxuriant gardens and orchards and meadows, for you and your livestock to enjoy. The clean water we drink comes from the soil. A certain amount of the rain that falls to earth returns to the seas and the oceans. Another part is retained by the soil. By means of the powerful absorbency of soil, the rainwater that falls begins to descend to the lower levels. The water stops when it reaches an impermeable layer, and the level of water there starts to accumulate under the effect of subsequent rainfall. Eventually, the saturation point is reached and the accumulated water looks for a way to leave that stratum. By means of its high pressure, the water emerges upward from the weakest point in the structure of the soil and eventually reaches the surface. This high pressure is the reason why artesian wells spurt water as they do. God reveals in one verse of the Quran how rainwater enters the soil and gives rise to underground sources. Do you not see that God sends down water from the sky and threads it through the earth to emerge as springs, and then by it brings forth crops of varying colors, which then wither, and you see them turning yellow, and then he makes them into broken stubble? There is a reminder in that for people of intelligence.
How is it that pure water can emerge from muddy soil? The way that pure water emerges from soil, which contains many wastes and waste products, is clearly a manifestation of God's compassion for human beings. God has arranged particles such as sand, clay, and gravel in soil so perfectly that their arrangement serves as a kind of filter for the water that enters the soil, removing particles and impurities from it. In other words, the soil cleans the water that enters it, rather than dirtying it.
Since water sometimes descends to the deepest parts of the soil, its temperature rises, meaning that it dissolves various minerals as it passes through different layers and absorbs them. The result of that is thermal springs. It has been proved that various diseases that cannot be easily cured with drugs are improved by the use of thermal springs. These things are, without doubt, miracles in the soil created by God. Another point requiring reflection is how water emerges in the form of springs. The structure of soil and water allows water stored underground to rise upward, and people thus enjoy easy access to water that falls from the sky and disappears into the depths of the soil. This is certainly a great blessing. It is a difficult and laborious task to locate the water that accumulates underground and raise it up several meters. By means of the properties that God has created in the soil and water, that water rises to the surface for people to use. If the different strata of the earth did not hold water, but instead let it pass through to even deeper layers, water would constantly head downward, and it would be physically impossible for it to rise up again. Had God created a structure like that, then none but God would be able to bring water back to the surface again. This is revealed in another verse. Say, what do you think? If one morning your water disappears into the earth, who will bring you running water? The way the soil quivers and swells. In 1827, Robert Brown, a Scottish botanist, discovered that a kind of shaking and quivering takes place in soil molecules when raindrops fall onto them. Soil is a system consisting of various molecules containing different types of metallic elements. Rain causes these metallic elements in soil to ionize. These ionic molecules then quiver when it rains. As drops of water strike these molecules from various directions, they absorb water and grow in size. These drops soon turn into mineral deposits inside the soil. Plants meet their water needs from these stores for 2 or 3 months. Were it not for these stores, water would percolate down to the lowest parts of the soil, and the plants on the surface would quickly dehydrate and die within a week at most. One important point needing to be noted here is the way that this property of soil is described as quivering and swelling in the Quran. This phenomenon, which scientists discovered around 200 years ago, is described as follows in the Quran, our holy book, which was revealed 14 centuries ago. And you see the earth dead and barren. Then when we send down water onto it, it quivers and swells and sprouts with luxuriant plants of every kind. The soil has been a source of civilizations in all ages.
Soil is not only a system involved with ecological equilibrium, its structural properties also allow it to be used as a very practical tool and raw material in daily life. Soil is such a useful material that it has played a great role in the emergence of many civilizations throughout history. In order for a society to be able to establish a civilization in a certain area and to raise it to a given level over time, a number of important conditions have to be met. At the top of the list is fertile soil suited to settlement, and for that soil to be close to water sources. These two factors have played a major role in the foundation of a great many civilizations.
We can easily see this when we look at the regions in which great civilizations have sprung up. For example, Egyptian civilization was founded on the fertile lands irrigated by the waters of the Nile. The civilizations founded by many communities that settled in Mesopotamia were born from the fertile soils watered by the Euphrates and Tigris. In addition to these, many civilizations established in Central Asia and the Middle East similarly settled in regions with fertile soils and plentiful water sources. There is an important reason for this shared behavior. Human beings require a specific infrastructure in order to be able to establish their own civilization in an area. The essential elements of that infrastructure are soil and water. All the civilizations ever founded have worked the land in various ways, experimented with various kinds of irrigation, and used soil and water in their magnificent works and artifacts. The great levels of art and science achieved using the soil by ancient civilizations, and the great power they attained as a result, is one of the subjects noted in verses of the Quran. One verse on the subject reads, Have they not traveled in the earth and seen the final fate of those before them? They had greater strength than them and cultivated the land and inhabited it in far greater numbers than they do.
Almost all the structures and works of art today regarded as the seven wonders of the world have come down to us from ancient civilizations. The architecture in some of these is today adopted as a model and copied by engineers. These services bestowed on civilization by the soil are still continuing today in many spheres.
Since soil is such a practical material, an entire industry based on it has emerged in our own day. Soil is used as a raw material in the cement, ceramics, glass, and construction industries. Combined with other materials and under the effect of heat, it can be converted into a highly resistant material. In addition, since the products manufactured in these sectors are also used in the construction, energy, and automotive industries, soil-based industries have also had a huge impact on other industries. Our Lord, the infinitely merciful and compassionate, blesses His servants via the soil in many spheres, making it possible for them to survive and improving and facilitating their daily lives. Conclusion. Soil is a marvel of creation.
Were the earth covered solely in water, nothing could live on it. If it consisted solely of rock and stone, living things would not be able to make use of it as they do, and it would also be most uncomfortable living on a rock-hard surface. We would be unable to benefit from the soil and the products of industry obtained from soil. Yet our infinitely compassionate Lord has created the earth neither covered in water, nor as hard as rock. In terms of its structure, texture, softness, and contents, soil is ideally suited for human beings and all life forms to live on. The great Islamic scholar Bediüzzaman Said Nursi describes how soil has been created with the most perfect structure as follows.
The original creation of the earth was as follows. Some liquid matter solidified at the divine command and became rock. With divine leave, the rock became earth. The word earth, ars, in the glorification means earth, soil. That is to say, the liquid matter was too soft to support anything, and the rock was too hard to be benefited from. Therefore, the all-wise and compassionate one spread the earth over the rock and made it the place of habitation for living beings. There is absolutely no doubt that God, who creates all things flawlessly and at the moment of His choosing, shows us His existence and evidence of His incomparable creation, even in a handful of soil. As revealed in the Quran, God creates all things in the finest form. He is God, the Creator, the Maker, the Giver of form. To Him belong the most beautiful names. Everything in the heavens and earth glorifies Him. He is the Almighty, the All-Wise.